Welcome into game number 4 between Team Kessel and Galaxy. Spawning in the upper left-hand portion of the screen, playing for Team Kessel. Can he bring the series back even at 2 games apiece? It is TK.Touche. And spawning across from him, on ESV in the pink color, playing Protoss for Galaxy. It is GXY.HaZardous. We saw a really safe game played by another Galaxy Protoss. We'll see if kind of the same mindset comes into play for GXY.HaZardous as we start this game. It's kind of interesting to see how teams' mindsets filter across through all of their players. Whether that be taking a macro-style approach, taking a little bit cheesier style perhaps, even, just based on the teams. And it's always interesting to see players of the same race on the same team play. Do they share builds? Do they help each other in practice that way? How does everything match up? It's really interesting to see that team dynamic come in to some lower level games. GXY.HaZardous is going to get in and scout. This is our first platinum level set of the day. Of course, not the ace set, which tends to be the best players from both teams, but these players are still very, very good. And PvP on Ohana, always kind of an interesting, PvP is always an interesting matchup to me. I really enjoy watching it. I think I would hate playing it and would probably claw my eyes out. I know that was random. I was actually decent at playing PvP, but that was because I made Immortals back when they weren't popular. But we see TK adding on immediate double gas. This could be for the kind of Naniwa Sase style that we saw earlier, where you put 2 probes in each gas geyser and mine that way. Or it could be for earlier tech, Robotics Facility, Twilight Council, even Stargate. Nothing's out of the question in PvP anymore. GXY.HaZardous adds on 1 gas geyser of his own. We see him not yet take the second gas. And I kind of miss the old trends of PvP. We do see this is actually going to be that 2 probes per geyser style from TK.Touche. I believe it was also the Kessel player earlier that used it. Just kind of interesting to note, maybe sharing that little bit of tactic. There's actually going to be a 3rd probe added on now. And was this noticed by GXY.HaZardous? Was it not? Those are important questions as well, just in terms of how he reacts to this. We see a 2nd gateway being added on in addition to the cybernetics core for GXY.HaZardous, and this is more and more looking like a 4-gate from him. Just the fact that there's no 2nd geyser, there's no attempt really getting enough gas for a tech, or an attempt at getting minerals for an expansion. The only thing I would say is not quite 4-gate is he hasn't cut probes yet. Still could have 22 is another common number to cut him at, so we'll keep an eye on that. TK.Touche, meanwhile, only has his 1 gateway, stocking up quite a lot of gas. I've been trying not to say quite a bit of gas because that's grammatically incorrect. If you're wondering, it also reminds me of J.P. McDaniel, who I actually can't stand listening to. Probe tries to get in for TK.Touche to see what's up, but it's shot down by the stalker. And GXY.HaZardous is still not really giving an indication as to what he wants to do here. We do have the warp gate, but not being chronoed out. He did stock up a chrono boost, which tends to indicate a 4-gate, but now he's adding on a 2nd assimilator. This is kind of an interesting build from him. We'll see where he wants to go. Now, this is 3-gate. Okay. So maybe a little bit of pressure here from TK.Touche. We'll probably see the robotics facility as well. Will this be kind of the same immortal timing that we saw in our earlier PvP, where you get 2 immortals and move across the map? Our earlier PvP, of course, was bronze level, and this is platinum, so there'll be quite a bit of difference in the playstyles. GXY.HaZardous adds on his Twilight Council, so 2 gates in the Twilight Council is kind of an interesting amount of buildings. Blink can be very good in this matchup if your opponent doesn't have it. It means that you can start trading shields on stalkers for hit points and start doing a lot of damage to your opponent's army and make yourself really cost efficient. You see a 3rd gateway as well as a robotics facility being added on. So this may be a Blink Observer play. Again, the chrono boost finally starting to go down, and now 3 stalkers trying to move up the ramp, but GXY.HaZardous just force fields that off. Not today, he says. And TK.Touche just going to GXY.HaZardous, going to knock down these destruct rocks, or at least attempt to. TK.Touche actually had more than enough units here. He could just move down the ramp and try to kill them if he wanted to. And it looks like both players a little bit leery about this engagement, but GXY.HaZardous actually making the right play and just backing off. Touche, I think, realized a little too late that those stalkers might be up for grabs. Adding on an Immortal now, adding on another Sentry as well, just in case Reinforcements of Stalkers comes back, and that was some sort of 4-gate attempt. But we do see Blink being added on now by HaZardous. He's starting to Chrono Boost. What did he Chrono Boost? Oh, he Chrono Boosted the Robotics Facilities. He's getting out that Observer. The Observer and the Blink should arrive at approximately similar times. So this can be very good for Blink Observer. Of course, there's only this little narrow cliff face. I believe you can blink up over here too. But it's not the best map for it, especially as condensed as the face is. You can guard your ramp and your front face of your base very easily. The thing for free right now, you can take out this pylon basically for nothing, and Touche can't do a whole lot to answer that. He does have this Immortal out, which just gives him a lot of power. There's the forward pylon, and the Observer headed cross-map, more Stalkers hurrying across the map on their little show pony legs to meet up at the Watchtower. So up to 6 Stalkers. Touche, of course, has 6 Stalkers of his own, but won't have Blink available, and we'll see the warp-in probably pretty soon. I really want to see a warp-in. He's not going to do it. Anyway, Observer gets in, and he does see his opponent's force, and just checking, we saw him click on a Stalker to make sure there's no upgrades on these, and seeing all of his opponent's production facilities, and this is actually really smart for HaZardous. Just going to go home. He needs to find a way to get himself an advantage in this game that he can use. It looks like he's going to try to get it via upgrades. And upgrades, of course, fantastic when your opponent has exactly the same units as you. He's going to try to take an expansion as well, and there's nothing here that can really scout that for Touche. The Observer on the way, but of course, supply blocked. Who remembers pylons? Those aren't important. Neither are probes. And actually, there's the expand at the exact same time from Touche. So this might be the most macro PvP that we've seen so far in CTL. Actually, it was a bronze match in week number 1 that was about the same. HaZardous a little bit risky with this Observer. This can just get sniped very easily if Touche just sets this over his army for a little bit. And it looks like they see each other. He's trying to get in position to snipe it. There it goes. Nice snipe of his opponent's Observer. That's pretty key. And now HaZardous trying to add on stuff of his own. He's adding on a second robotics. Is that okay? Second robotics facility as well as a robotics support bay. So another advantage you can take is Colossus count. That's pretty key as well. And once you have the higher Colossus count, basically as long as you don't get into the worst positioning ever, you can just win the game. Touche moving across the map now. I believe he does have a little bit higher army supply. Yeah, 45 army supply to 31 in favor of Touche, but workers heavily in favor of HaZardous. So this will be a little bit difficult if Touche does want to push this. The more sentries being warped in by HaZardous, he needs to have enough force fields to block off the ramp. Will he react in time? Those are really nice force fields, only 2. I thought you needed 3 for this ramp, but I'm pleasantly surprised. And that's actually going to be Touche's signal to back off. I'm not sure he really needed to. He could have sent his Observer in and seen that there's not really any more sentry energy. He's only got enough for 2 more force fields. He can lose 2 more Stalkers and still have that big army supply lead. Zealot going to try to head in from HaZardous. This is really cheeky. Opponent's armies across the map might as well try to scout. Looks like it was on an A move, unfortunately, so he's not going to get the scouting information that he really wanted, which was that natural. Let's see. Oh, he did spot it, and he even saw the forge. So actually, really nicely done by HaZardous, I have to say. But that's only the first forge, excuse me. First forge for Touche on the way. So upgrades a little bit in favor of HaZardous right now at 1-0 to 0-0. Excuse me. Not really focusing on that, though. Still just going to sit on that. And starting to pump out his first Colossus. Looks like he's going to be trailing in Colossus count, but he does have 2 robotics facilities to his opponent's 1. Touche really just staying on this core group of production facilities, 3 gates and a robo. Whereas HaZardous has added on a couple more. There's a little bit of cheeky play here from Touche, sending a couple of Zealots up into the main via this Warp Prism. Doesn't do too much damage. Let's see where the workers killed. No, it doesn't look like it. It's not quite worth it there, but always good to your opponent at least a little bit scared of potential counter-harassment. But first Colossus now out. The magnificent beast for HaZardous. and all of a sudden we're playing a macro PvP. What this means is the player with the higher Colossus count tends to win games. However, positioning so important when it does come down to Colossus versus Colossus battles. Your advantage in that number can be negated if your opponent gets into a better concave than you. And just because it's so up in the air is probably the reason people are starting to hate PvP again. It went into this blissful time where you had 4 or 5 different openings you could do, and everybody was very happy. There was joy in the PvP land. But once it gets to this stage of the game, it really becomes about Colossus count. Then once it gets to be late game, it's who has the mothership and who has enough vortex. And those are more important questions. And all of a sudden, more options open up to you. You can transition into, I don't want to call it Sky Protoss, but you kind of can. More scouting information being gained by HaZardous. He sees his opponent's Colossus count is only at 2, and that might be kind of a mental pat on the back for him for getting that second robotics facility as his 3rd Colossus finishes up. A little bit of lag apparently going on in the game. They do want land. I think most people would agree with that. But now both players sitting back. Actually, HaZardous not spending his minerals too well. It would be really cool of him to add on a couple more gateways for that production, maybe even a 3rd base. We see 46 probes to 44, so not the biggest lead, but a slight lead for HaZardous. He also has a slight lead in army supply now as he heads out to check out a watchtower. There's 4 Colossus with this army compared to his opponent's 3, but of course there's no assailing this choke point in any way. So HaZardous would have to kind of circumvent that. Keep in mind, he does have blink. If he's able to get vision of his opponent's high ground, he can just blink and kind of negate all the positioning his opponent's done so far. But really, I think this is just kind of to check out things going on. He can start to move over into the 3rd base, and attack definitely isn't on his mind. This Immortal actually does so much damage to destructible rocks. Look at that. Excuse me, more Colossus rallying across the map. I know it's kind of taken from When Cheese Fails, but these do look kind of like giraffes. I just have to throw that out there. Probe is going to come over here and actually lay down that 3rd command center, 3rd nexus, excuse me, and we see neither player really has vision of the other in this area, despite everything being so close. And now Touche sees the pylon, he sees a couple of stalkers. Ooh! Hiding it, he's in the shrub. He can't... Oh. A little bit unfortunate there, and he's actually going to cancel the nexus and the pylon. So we do see more warpins from HaZardous maybe to try and take advantage of that. And now seeing his opponent's army in the middle of the map, we'll start to see a little bit more of a defensive posture from Touche. He is going to add on his 3rd nexus, but over here in the top right, which is the more standard position, and behind this, not really pressure, but behind this army positioning, HaZardous adding on his own 3rd base. This would be time where the Warp Prism could come in and do some damage if he sneaks around these couple of stalkers set back to defend. But now HaZardous has a pretty Colossus. Actually, they're even on Colossus. That's kind of surprising to me. But the big giraffe's getting into position. He is going to move up the ramp now. I'm not sure this is the best idea. One Colossus melts, and we see just lasers everywhere. The front line of the army from HaZardous is melted, though, and Touche comes out a little bit ahead in that engagement, 132 supply to 106. And yeah, it was pretty ill-advised from HaZardous. He managed to zap one of his opponent's Colossus, which is kind of important. He kept all of his own alive, so he can extend that lead, but the front line of his army just evaporated during that, whereas a lot of these other kind of gateway units, these Immortals, all still alive for Touche. At this point, they just kind of become fodder to the Colossus beams, and the only thing that can really deal with that is a couple of Archons. We see HaZardous going to be the first, actually just barely the first to make that tech switch, adding on his own Templar Archives, and we see a Templar Archives on the way as well from Touche. I'm not sure where, though. Maybe one of these buildings. I found it. There it is. More scouting being done by HaZardous, and seeing that army positioning will definitely lead him to think that there's a 3rd base over there. And both players now really protecting that 3rd base. We see the mains have basically mined out for both players, so 3rd base is the next step. And this is definitely the longest PvP, I think, in the CTL so far. Definitely the longest one I've casted. I'm not sure if it's the longest one overall. 2 more Colossus on the way from HaZardous, and then just to take a look at that count, it's 8 to 8. 2 robotics facilities, churning them out for both players. And HaZardous kind of slowly falling behind. He's going to take his 4th base a little bit sooner, although he doesn't necessarily need that much economy. 52 probes is a pretty good number. You can get up to about 60, maybe 65 would be pushing it. But we see HaZardous starting to make that transition into late game. He's adding on all the rest of his production facilities. I wish you could click on the production tab and actually go to what's building. And there's a Stargate, there's this Dark Shrine as well, and those both just open up more possibilities later on. And we see Touche doing the same thing, adding on his own Stargate. No Dark Shrine yet, but we will keep an eye on that. And now the battle of upgrades has recommenced, plus 2 armor on the way for HaZardous, and we see 2-0 right now for Touche, compared to the 2-1 of HaZardous. Army just moving back to respond to something. I believe the Warp Prism is actually still alive and untouched back here. So yeah, not too sure what that was all about. Maybe a little bit of mix-up in the hotkeys or something. Both players sitting back, monitoring the Colossus count. We're still even, 10 to 10. Fleet Beacon being added on, as well as a Phoenix. The Phoenix actually canceled. Oh, never mind, there's the Phoenix. He's going to use that to get scouting information, I imagine, as these guys can just dart in. You can use them to fight Colossus, although they're not very good, so it's way more valuable as a scouting tool. Right now, Fleet Beacon's on the way from both players. We will see motherships. Photon cannons in the main being added on. Perhaps in response, I'm not sure if he scouted the Dark Shrine. It doesn't look like it. Actually, he hasn't scouted his opponent's main in quite a while, if ever. But the Phoenix gets in. You can see quite a bit back in the space, spotting natural, and just look at the scouting information that's gained from this. All of his opponent's tech structures laid bare. More gateways being added on, and I actually really like this Phoenix from HaZardous. Able to spot everything. He is going to lose it, but it's not the most valuable supply. It's not a very good fighting unit. He actually hold positions it just so it dies, so they can have that supply for other things. Colossus out now, 12 to 11. Slightly HaZardous, not the biggest deal. About 2 probes as well, which means that his army is about 4 supply smaller. And we see the motherships on the way. 58 seconds, 33, so about a 20-second advantage for Touche. The only reason that's important is because he'll have 20 seconds sooner that he can vortex. Making the third mothership at the 3rd base is Touche. The difference here is the main for HaZardous, and adding on more Stargates. I actually really like late Stargate play. Maybe it's just because I'm Terran and you tech switch to not Stargate, but Starports late. You tech switch to Sky Terran. But we do see Touche not adding those on, instead going for shield upgrades, which are very valuable on these Archons. And this game is going to explode before long. I know it's been pretty boring. Thanks for hanging with me. 4th base being added on now by Touche. Of course, that's way later than his opponent, but it really doesn't matter. They're both still mining. Does look like Touche's actually pulled quite a few too many workers over here from his natural. And a little bit of idle workerness in the main. But now finally, army moving out on the map. Just look at the Colossus. 12 Colossus to 11 still. 2 more Colossus being added on by Touche, which will give him a little advantage. Motherships are out. I'm not sure where the mothership of Touche went. That's actually a really important question. Did it get canceled? Huh. I really wonder what happened to it. He's going to want that mothership. Mark my words. Anyway, in comes HaZardous into the 4th base. He's going to take out these cannons, these not quite production buildings yet. Now he's going to pull out just to make sure the positioning is so important for both players. He really wants that mothership with enough energy to vortex. Only has 68 seconds on it. There's no observer with this army. This could be devastating for Touche. And yeah, he doesn't actually see most of his opponent's army right now. There are feedbacks to the mothership, so it definitely won't have enough to vortex. Observer now finally flies in. This is a really even battle. The front line is all evaporated. Touche now cutting through his opponent's Colossus, and it looks like he will have enough with the observer here. He cuts through his opponent's army. All the Colossus still alive. And Touche, I thought he was in a bad position there, but his observers showed up just in time, still at 8 Colossus. There's a couple of Void Rays here which may be able to clean everything up. There's nothing that actually shoots air anymore. And HaZardous doing what he can with these couple. There's the reinforcement of Stalkers, though, and I don't think these Void Rays can take them down. Touche now moving in to his opponent's natural. He fries the Nexus and all the probes here. And the Stalker's still engaging. This is the last little battle as he takes down the Void Ray. HaZardous kind of out of options. 3 more Void Rays coming out. I don't think they're going to be enough as Touche can continue warping in Stalkers and sending them across the map. We can even see a little platoon headed in. He will clean up his opponent's Stalkers here with good target firing, but in come the rest of them. Zealots trying to delay these Stalkers or at least damage them so that the Void Rays have a chance. HaZardous still hanging on by a thread as he takes down his opponent's Colossus, but now there's just so many Stalkers left, and he's not producing any more Void Rays right now. That's the last Void Rays that goes down. Touche still on 100 supply to his opponent's 63. We do see he's going to go for a Zealot counterattack as his last-ditch effort to try and hang into the game. And, I mean, why not? After playing a 28-minute-long PvP, you might as well. This is going to be the important buildings. If he can get rid of these starports, Touche will have won the game. Now trying to depower them. There's still quite a few of these pylons powering them. And now these aren't quite target firing. Zealot's going to come into the third. They did take down the photon cannons that were here. Now getting into the mineral line, taking down a lot of the probes. And there are 2 of the 3 starports being depowered. That's basically going to be it for HaZardous' attempts. The Zealot counterattack still doing a lot of damage. He's taken out a lot of his opponent's economy. If we actually look, 32 workers killed now to 24, but unfortunately all of his tech going down, and that's more important. He's down to just these 4 gateways as well as the cybernetics core over here at his 3rd base. He still has his 4th base intact. His 5th base just finished up. But again, kind of separated from his tech and his unit-producing structures. HaZardous, meanwhile, finally has cleaned up the Zealot counterattack, and all that's left now is to get up a big enough army. He wants to make sure he kills off all of these. He doesn't want any nasty surprises, and HaZardous has to try and tech up again. I wouldn't mind seeing another Stargate or 2. I'm just kind of wondering what he's doing right now. He did add on a couple more Zealots. They're headed up to this top location. There's 2 Archons here to defend, which should be more than enough. We do see probes being added in to the army for Touche, just trying to hide, make sure that nothing horrible bad happens to him. And as we see, Archons are actually really good against Zealots, especially 3-2-2 versus, I believe he's at 2-1. No, he's actually at 3-2. Huh. Now, in comes the War of the Worlds army from HaZardous. He's actually supply blocked, or for Touche, excuse me, supply blocked HaZardous now, taking down the rest of the production. Stalker's now going for a secondary counterattack. ET comes in. There's actually no detection here, so he's got through a lot of these probes. But now most of the tech structures are gone. All the probes are dead now. 45 supply to 85. Touche's still not managing this the best, but he's got more than enough minerals. He's got a nice cache of probes hidden up here so that he can make some buildings just in case. We do see DTs starting to rip through the main, taking down more and more of these tech structures. And right now, HaZardous's vision is kind of strange. He's got this base over here, and we see Touche doesn't want to walk into a trap, taking down the destructible rocks. He could even split up his observers if he really wanted to. There's the Dark Templar, not going to do anything, making sure his opponent still has an observer. And DT's still running rampant. He's actually killed his opponent's robotics facility, which is interesting. Touche now taking a Nexus in his opponent's natural, just to try and reset up. We actually look, probe count is 9 to 9 right now. Most of the 9 concentrated over here for HaZardous, whereas all 9 probes are over here for Touche. He's building a cannon just in case the DTs do find him. But the big thing is this army has nothing to contend with. He still has detection available to him as well. Stalkers coming in, they're getting roasted. He's trying to target down his opponent's observers. Oh, he does get it. Is that actually enough? He's got a couple of buildings left, and all of a sudden this has become way more interesting. These DTs have nothing that can detect them. There's a cannon up here in the main. I don't know if there are cannons anywhere else. Has HaZardous actually done it? 2 DTs chasing down his opponent's army. He will be revealed soon. He actually knows where this pylon is. That's going to be his last building. He still has That's a Zealot. Oh, does he not have a probe alive? Oh, there's no probe right now. And Touche GG's. Oh, never mind. This is kind of a manner GG. As the pylon goes down, GT's not going to be able to do it. And that'll end the game. Whew, that was a little bit closer than it needed to be. The Dark Templars, that was a really nice last-ditch effort. I have to say, if he'd had a Nexus alive, if he'd kept a probe alive, he would have been in such a fantastic spot. He could have built a Nexus, over here or something. Back in his main, just wherever. He had a Void Ray still alive, too. But these Dark Templars had nothing that could detect them except for a single cannon back here for Touche, and he needed to keep mining to get some more up. Oh, that was so close there at the end. Really nice play to snipe the observers. But Touche able to pull it off. He brings the series back level at 2-2. So that kind of boring game for a while turned out to be quite a barn burner there. Whew. Breathe a little bit. So we'll head into silver match number 2 in just a second. It'll be game number 5 between Team Kessel and Team Galaxy. Both teams tied up at 2. You're watching CTL Week 5, casted by Meristematic.